Hey, what's up, friend? It's Hector here, the Kettlebell Coach. In today's video, we're going to be answering a question from Sayek. Sayek's question is a deep dive into diet, please, especially diet for kettlebell lifting, how to lift, eat, and remain lean. Thanks, Coach. Great videos and channel. Sayek, I appreciate the question. So if you're not aware, if you're new to the channel here, we do a weekly Q&A, if you will. On Mondays, I will post in the community section, like, what do you need help with this week? From there, I encourage you, drop your questions in that feed, and I would love to answer them. I'm usually going to answer one question at a time, just because some of these questions usually require a more in-depth contextual answer versus the do this kind of thing. So I like to dive more into the context to give you more insights and just help you think a little bit differently when it comes to your strength training with kettlebells, nutrition, etc. So on Mondays, just be on the lookout for that post. All right, so let's dive in. This is a deep one. This is a big question here. So what I'm going to talk about today, I just want to set the context of what to expect. We're going to talk about how to eat for a high performance body, which will lead to, fat loss. But ultimately, our nutrition should fuel our training and not be looked at from a perspective of like restriction, although there may be times when you need to restrict and cut back, again, depending on what the goal is. But a lot of what we're going to talk about here is how to eat for a high performance body. Sayek, you requested a deep dive. Well, I'm going to take you really deep today. All right. So here's what we're covering. We're covering the 7-step roadmap to a high performance body, how to lift, eat, and remain lean. So literally what I'm going to take you through is a framework that we take our students through in the Hardstyle Academy on how to eat in a way that they can pair the specific strength training that they're doing and how to pair that with their eating strategy. So depending on the way that you're training, depending on the energy system that you're taxing, you want to pair your nutrition strategy accordingly. Okay. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So this is what we've been using for over a decade, helping our students in the academy do, when we did it for 12 and a half years in my gym. And then we've been doing it in our online coaching since 2018 with our students. So step number one, or I'm going to break these up into two buckets. So bucket number one is going to be eating for performance, and that's going to cover steps 1 through 3. And then bucket number 2 is going to be performance progression training, and that's going to be steps 4 through 7. So before I move forward, if you want to kind of skip around, check the call notes, check the timestamps, and you can jump around the today's training as you deem appropriate. Okay, so I want to respect your time. So bucket number 1 is going to be eating for performance. Okay, so step number 1, if the goal is to get lean, if that's the goal, if the goal is fat loss, right? And getting lean, let's get our vocabulary here down, because I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Getting lean could mean many things. So when I say, let's just keep these words synonymous. When I say get lean, I also mean drop body fat. I also mean lose weight, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But even though they're not the same thing, because I know there's going to be people, well, losing weight and losing body fat are not the same thing. Well, at the end of the day, if you lose body fat, you're going to lose weight. Okay. So when I say get lean, I also mean lose weight. I mean lose body fat. So however you want to interpret that, that's kind of what we're talking about here. So if the goal is to get lean, i.e. lose weight, lose body fat, drop your body fat percentage, tone up, whatever language you want to use there. Step number 1 is you need to establish your own unique eating targets. So that's one of the first things that we do based on our client's particular goal. We establish a caloric baseline. Everybody's caloric baseline is going to be different based on their daily activity, based on their age, based on their body fat percentage. We want to establish what that is for you. And within those unique eating targets, you want to establish what your caloric baseline is going to be. You want to establish what your protein target is going to be, and then your carb target. And then from there, we allow fats to fill in the gap. Okay, so you need to establish what your own unique eating targets are. And then from there, it's all about feedback. So let's say at the end of the day, based on your age, based on your daily activity, based on your what kind of physical training that you're going to be doing. Let's just say your caloric baseline is 2,500 calories. And then from there, we break that up into, proteins, carbs, and fats. We want to make sure that we're getting the right nutrients in to fuel our training. And let's say after about 2 weeks, I talked about this in the last protocol, in the last video, you want to maintain this for at least 2 weeks, right? To see what adjustments our body is making, and then maybe another 2 weeks to solidify those gains. So let's say after about 4 weeks, and you notice a little bit of fat loss. Well, you're not quite in the deficit yet then if the goal is to lean out. So maybe cut it back by 200 calories and then rinse and then adjust your macros accordingly. Okay, so we teach our students how to follow a macro-based diet. The reason for that is, well, I'll get into that in a minute. Okay, so that's step number one. Establish your unique eating your unique eating targets, right? Calories, protein, carbs, fats, and that will be based on your current weight, your body fat percentage, your age, etc. Step number two is going to be choose foods that you enjoy eating. That's a key piece. There's no such thing as good and bad foods. Let's get that out of the way right now. You hear people like, "Oh, don't eat that. That's bad for you." I remember when we had our first anniversary of our gym, Hardstyle, here in Corpus Christi. When we had our first anniversary, we went we had this 3D kettlebell cake made, and then we ordered pizza, and we had finger foods and wings and things like that. And our students were like freaking out, staring at me. They're like, "You eat that? Like, you can eat that?" I'm like, "Yeah, like I'm not a robot. I like my pizza, wings, and ice cream just like anybody else, but there's a time and place for it." So there's no such thing as good food, and there's no such thing as bad food. Food has no moral value. Okay. It's either food that's in line with your goals or food that's not in line with your goals. Okay. So what I recommend, the only way that you're going to stay consistent with anything is by doing things that you enjoy doing. With that said, you've got to do a lot of things that you don't enjoy doing in order to find the thing that you do enjoy doing, right? People talk about that, fall in love with the process kind of thing. So food's in line and food's not in line with your goals. That's the key difference there. That's the distinction. Okay, but there's no such thing as good and bad foods. So what we do is we teach our students, and this is why we teach our students a macro-based diet. We don't teach them what to eat. We teach them how to eat. So we're all adults here. You know dang well what foods are in line with your particular goal and what foods are not in line with your particular goal. If your goal is to get to X% body fat or drop X amount of pounds of body fat, and then you establish, well, this is my caloric baseline, or these are my targets. I got to get in so many grams of protein. Eating pizza and wings on a regular basis is not going to get you there. That doesn't mean that pizza and wings are bad. They're just not in line with your goals at that moment. So there's a time and place, right? So we need to exercise prudence when it comes to our nutrition. Okay. So choose foods that you enjoy eating, bottom line. All right. So we don't teach our students what to eat. We teach them how to eat. We give them a customizable framework for them. And then from there, they have the freedom to operate freely within the system, within the structure, and they can plug in whatever foods that they enjoy eating. That's going to help them stay more consistent and more compliant with the program. All right. So next thing I want to talk about here is step number 3 of eating for performance. And this is something that I call the RER fat loss equation. Okay. So the RER fat loss equation, as you can see here from this chart, this is a chart courtesy of the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And what this is, RER stands for respiratory exchange ratio. Now, before I dive into this, because I know people are going to say stuff, "Oh, according to my PhD," like I know this is going to come up. Okay. Look, first and foremost, fat loss, weight loss, getting lean, however you want to say it, is a result of a caloric deficit, period. Okay. Negative energy balance is where you're going to lose weight. What we're talking about here in the RER fat loss equation is how to eat for performance. So I just want to get that out of the way. Okay. How to eat for performance. And this is what we've been using for years. I've used it in my own training, and we use it for our students. So RER stands for respiratory exchange ratio. And so what it is fat or fatty acids and glucose ultimately are the preferred and major sources of fuel for the body. Well, your body can become fat adapted and you don't really need carbs. Like, please. Yes, your body can become fat adapted, but it doesn't prefer that. It prefers carbohydrates. Okay. So we don't advocate cutting out food sources. You're not going to be able to stay consistent with that. Okay. So if you like having, a greasy cheeseburger from time to time, there's a time and place to do that. And you want to pair that in a particular way that you're strength training. And to use carbs and body fat efficiently, your body needs to take in enough oxygen. So oxygen allows fat and glucose to be burned as fuel. I did a video on the podcast here, or just on the channel, where I talked about the difference between fat burning and fat loss. Like, they're not the same thing. And this confuses people. Like, do this kettlebell fat loss workout, do this kettlebell fat burning workout. There's no such thing as a kettlebell fat loss workout. That's just pure marketing to get you to buy something. All right. There's no such thing as a kettlebell fat loss workout. There is a kettlebell burning. There is a fat burning kettlebell workout. Okay. So I'll link that. You can check that out. But in order to use carbs and fat efficiently, your body needs oxygen. Okay. So the result is so oxygen allows fat and glucose to be burned as fuel, as I just said. And the result is the waste product, carbon dioxide and water. So it's like this. Imagine your car burning gas, right? The gas in your body, and the exhaust, what comes out, that's CO2 and water being like burnt out. Okay. So RER, or respiratory exchange ratio, dictates which energy source is being used. So if you're looking at the chart, you can see percentage of carbs and percentages of fats. So I'm going to break that down here in just a second. Higher RER means that the primary energy source is coming from carbs or glucose. All right. So if you look at the chart, 0.9 to 1 respiratory exchange ratio, look at the percentage of your energy is coming from carbs. 67.5 to 100% energy that you're being used in that workout is coming from carbohydrates. So exercise methods that put you in an environment to thrive on carbs is going to be your kettlebell complexes, kettlebell chains, long cycle clean and jerks, like high volume snatching, pretty much anything that goes beyond 15 seconds of work, you are in the glycolytic energy system. So glycolysis burns sugar, right? Carbs. And so if you're going to be doing kettlebell complexes, if you're going to be under tension for a period of time, if you're training bodybuilding, if you're grappling, if you're doing jujitsu, those are very glycolytic centric activities. Well, if you want to perform at a high level, you need to make sure that you're having a good amount of carbs in your diet. So when RER is high, the primary energy source is coming from carbs. Okay. This is why carbs are so dang important when it comes to performance. Lower RER. So if you look at RER at like 0.71, from 0.71 all the way to 0.85, the highest percentage of energy being used from the foods that you're consuming is coming from fats. And you'll see anything from 100% energy is coming from fat all the way to 49.3 coming from fat. Okay. So this would make your workout fat burning. So there's no such thing as a kettlebell fat loss workout. Fat loss, as I mentioned, is a direct result of a caloric deficit, of a negative energy balance. Now, fat burning, on the other hand, what that means is depending on the type of training that you're doing. So this is all just based on the programming. based on the training that you're doing, you will likely be using the energy that you're burning in that workout will be coming from fats. So you would want to have a more fat centric diet. So if you're following more of like a keto based diet, low carb, the training that you're going to want to do is something that has a low RER. So walking, rucking, kettlebell with ANA protocols, and ANA is an lactic and aerobic. So something that's got long rest periods is something that you're going to want to, kettlebell simple and sinister, something to that effect is what you're going to want to have a higher fat diet, because the primary energy source that you will burning will be fats. All right. Now you'll notice that the highest percentage of calories come from fat when RER is at 0.71. And you might be asking yourself, man, if this is the highest percentage of the body's fuel is coming, like when I'm at RER 0.71, like why don't I always train at 0.71 all the time? Well, the problem is you can't, because the only time the body can be at 0.71 RER is when it's at complete rest, meaning when you're sleeping. So when you're sleeping, the primary energy system being used is fat. Now, if you want a double whammy here, if you want to boost muscle building, if you want to build some muscle, and you want to stay lean, and you want to drop some body fat, right? So you can see more of that hard-earned muscle with your kettlebell workouts. Train at an average heart rate of an average heart rate of 75 to 80% maximum heart rate. Inside the academy, we give our students like detailed like heart rate percentages to train at based on, so we know that they're in their exact RER. For you, if you want to kind of get both, like two birds with one stone, train at 75 to 80% heart rate. And what does that sound? That sounds familiar, right? One of my last videos, I talked about how strength is built in the 71 to 80% zones of intensity. Intensity meaning the weight that you're lifting. So the same could be applied to building muscle, dropping body fat in the context of heart rate training. So training at 75 to 80% of your maximum heart rate. And that 75 to 81% of maximum heart rate correlates to 0.9, 0.95, right? You see that green, 0.9 to 0.95, which means the majority of your energy would be coming from carbohydrates, right? 67.5% to 84% of your diet should be from carbs. I mean, not diet. 64% of the energy being used is coming from your diet, from carbs. All right. So, which means, and ultimately, what that means is, so when you eat carbs, and your body breaks that down into glucose and it stores it in the liver to be used in the liver and in the muscle to be used for energy. Well, when you start training in a way that you're training in the glycolytic pathway, kettlebell complexes, bodybuilding, jiu-jitsu, grappling, right? That and something that triggers that muscle burn, anything beyond 15 seconds, basically. That's how you know you're in glycolysis. And the more intense the training session, right? The higher oxygen you're consuming, you're going to burn more glucose. And ultimately what happens is eventually you burn off the glycogen that's in the muscle, you burn off the glycogen that's inside of the liver. And then once that's depleted, you'll tap into stored body fat to fuel your workout. Well, what's stored body fat? That's the actual fat hanging on your body. And so that's what turns it into a fat burning workout, right? Because it starts to switch and your body just goes into all of its reserves. Okay. But still, the goal at the end of the day, if the goal is weight loss, fat loss, you still need to be in a caloric deficit. Okay. So if you want that double whammy, train at 75 to 80% of maximum heart rate, and then make sure you get your sleep in. Make sure you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. When you do that, you're going to drop RER to 0.71, leaving fat is the majority energy being burned. Okay. And so that's how you can double down on fat loss. That's how you can lift, eat, and remain lean. right? Without any additional work. Like you don't have to work out any harder. You don't have to diet any harder. It's just a matter of balancing out hormones and, having the right strategy on how to do that. So that closes out bucket number one. Okay. Eating for performance, establishing your own unique eating targets, choose foods that you enjoy eating, and then understanding and knowing how to deploy the RER fat loss equation. This is, again, this is what we've been using for, over a decade to help our students drop weight, build muscle while losing body fat at the same time. Okay. Because it's totally possible with the right strategy. All right, the second bucket is the performance progression training. We're going to cover steps 4 through 7. So this is how we pair the diet with the actual training itself. And so what we do is we take our students through four phases of training, and we call these phases. Phase 1 is called Ignite. Phase 2 is called Transform. Phase 3 is called Growth, and then phase 4 is called Synergy, right? So Ignite, Transform, Growth, and Synergy. So Ignite, what we do is it's essentially an insulin reset. Why would anybody want to do an insulin reset? Why would anybody want to, and why would anyone need to do an insulin reset? For the most part, most of us, because of our Western American diet, our body doesn't know how to use carbs effectively. Like our blood sugar is just all over the place. We eat these high glycemic foods, right? Eating chips and processed foods, and like blood sugar just drops like over and over. We eat these high processed foods, boom, blood sugar drops up. Then it has to, release adrenaline and whatnot to bring it back down. And it's just all over the place. So our body doesn't know how to use glucose effectively. And so people think, well, if I just don't eat carbs anymore, that will fix things. Well, I mean, it can, and it probably does, but it's not something that you can maintain long term. All right. And that's when you get into that yo-yo, right? That yo-yo diet, that yo-yo effect. So what we do is we take them through a 4-week insulin reset. So weeks 1 through 2, we go really low carbs. We give them a specific carb target. We have them maintain that for 2 weeks. And it starts to realign hormones. It starts to regulate their blood sugar. And then on week 3, we add a little bit more carbs, get their body acclimated to it. Week 4, we add a little bit more carbs. So we take the carbs out, stabilize the blood sugar. And then from there, we slowly start to add carbs back in. And so that people would think, oh, that's a keto diet. It's not a keto diet. What we're doing is we're just doing an insulin reset to retrain and reteach your body how to use carbs effectively, because we're going to be adding them back in. And so the training, if we're following the RER fat loss equation, then we would want to train at a low RER, which means we would not want to have a high heart rate as we're training. So their training for those first 4 weeks is a strength-focused training protocol. And we take them through the first phase of the performance progression pyramid is we take them through strength training and strength endurance training. And we work on just building one discipline at a time. And the exercise that they're doing there is the kettlebell clean and the kettlebell press. And that across all 16 weeks, all 4 phases, they're building their foundation. So they're learning, clean, press, squat, lunge, keeping it basic, just building the fundamentals. But it's all based on this RER and performance progression. So for the first 4 weeks, they're going through low carb to kind of reset the insulin. And then their training is aligned to the RER. Okay, so the training is not going to get them really excited in terms of heart rate, muscle burn. So we're trying to avoid glycolysis in that first phase. And that's how they're able to perform optimally on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis without feeling tired, and they're still eating foods that they enjoy eating. Ignite is probably Ignite, and the next phase is Transform. Those 2 phases are probably the most impactful, because that's when they really the body fat literally just falls off. It just falls off. In the description, I'm going to include a couple of just testimonials from students that have worked with us that have followed this. Take it from, don't listen to me, don't believe what I say, but, listen to the people that have actually gone through it, and they'll give you some feedback. But literally the body fat just, melted off following this exact strategy. So phase 2 is Transform. This phase is all about stripping body fat, building, and starting the process of muscle building. Okay, growth is where we really solidify our gains. So transform phase is weeks 5 through 8. This is where we reintroduce carbs into the diet based on their body weight and their body fat percentage. So we really start to crank up the carbs now. Now that we've reset insulin for 2 weeks, we slowly added them in week 3. We added them again on week 4. Now the carbs are a big part of their diet. Why is the carbs a big part of their diet? Because now we head into higher volume glycolytic training, because we want to start creating some muscle damage and putting them in a metabolic environment that's going to be conducive to building muscle mass and stripping body fat. And we also introduce them to a cheat day to boost leptin levels. So what happens is, if you're in a caloric deficit, so hormone leptin is a hormone that comes from your body fat that tells you, hey, stop eating. Stop eating. I'm full. Well, the higher percentage of body fat that you have, right, the more fat that you have to lose, you actually have a higher metabolism. So people think, oh, I've got a slow metabolism. No, actually, the more body fat that you have, the higher your metabolism is, because that means you have more leptin. And leptin is also tied to the release of T3 and T4, right? Thyroid. So you've seen people that have had a lot of weight to lose and they lost a lot of weight really quick. But then what happens? The weight stalls out and they can't lose anymore, or it's super slow, or they just completely stall out, right? What do they call that? The plateau. Well, why has that happened? Well, because of that drop in body fat, leptin comes from body fat. Well, now leptin levels are low. And since leptin levels are tied to the release of T3 and T4 in your thyroid, when the leptin comes down, your metabolism comes down too. So how do we boost that? How do we get leptin levels back up? Well, leptin is also tied to caloric intake. This is why we don't advocate staying in chronic caloric deficits, because if you stay in a chronic caloric deficit, you're pulling down your metabolism. So we want to how do we continue to lose fat but have high leptin levels? Well, this is where we'll incorporate things like a cheat day. So they can have 1 day weeks. Now, by now, they're 5 weeks into this thing. They've already established the habits and the discipline to incorporate a cheat day. So that 1 day a week, that one cheat day is just that one surge in calories. And for them, I mean, most of our students just don't go crazy, but they'll maintain their normal day. But hey, I'm going to go out for pizza and wings tonight, right? So that extra 1,000, 1,500 calories, that boost bumps leptin back up and metabolism pops up as well. And then the training is intense enough to where they're not going to gain that as body fat. We have a lot of our students that go through the program, and again, the ones that I'll share inside of the comments in the description, they were afraid of adding a cheat day because of the results that they saw in Ignite phase. They were like, man, I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to do the cheat day. But then they noticed as they did the cheat day, they kept losing body fat. Why? Because we were creating an environment, nutrition and training, that was conducive to continue to lose body fat. And at this time, they're not restricting the foods that they enjoy. They're eating foods that they enjoy eating. So the training there is higher volume, and we start getting to density training. So higher volume density training. And this is where we introduce a new exercise, right? So now we're creating density just by the virtue of adding an exercise. So in phase 1, we worked on clean and press, essentially. We get to transform phase 2, we add the squat. So now we're training clean, press, and squat, and we're running it as a complex in the same training session. So by virtue of all that, we're now entering into density territory. So it's a more intense. So their heart rate's going to be up, which means it's going to be higher RER. So they're going to want a higher carb intake, which is why we really increase the carbs in phase 2. And ultimately what that does too is the types of exercises that we're having them do, press and squat, those are grind exercises, right? So grinds are, presses, squats, deadlifts, pull-ups, those slow movements, those strength-focused movements. Those research has shown that they increase testosterone, and we increase testosterone and we start building some muscle through the 3 phases of building muscle. And that's creating muscle damage. So more time under tension, Then we are leveraging mechanical loading or mechanical tension, which is basically skill-based training. So knowing how to deploy the professional applications of tension, that mechanical load increases again, the whole idea here is we're creating an environment conducive to fat loss and building muscle. And then the third phase of building muscle is metabolic stress, right? So that's that pump. That's getting into lactic acid, training in glycolysis. And then to make sure that we're performing optimally, they have a higher based carb diet. And friends, I'm telling you, like the body fat just continues to fall off while in performance increases. Then from there, we move into, after 4 weeks, we move into phase 4. So you notice these are 4-week cycles, right? So as I mentioned in past videos, 2 weeks for adaptation, 2 weeks to stabilize the gains. Then we move into growth phase. This is maximal strength training. This is where we, again, dial things up even more. So weeks 9 through 12, higher calories, higher carbs, higher protein. And you might be thinking, I'm going to gain weight. We had one of our students, Ryan, shout out to Ryan. I just had a call with him the other day. We had one of our students, Ryan, he was like, dude, he was eating over 3,000 calories. He's like, man, I can't believe I can eat this much and I'm still dropping body fat. The way we teach our students and the frameworks that we take them through is the leaner that they get, they actually get to eat more. And he was like, man, I can't put together how I'm just getting this lean and I'm eating almost twice the amount that I've ever eaten before. Okay. Again, because we've created that environment conducive to dropping body fat and building muscle without being restrictive. So in phase 3, growth, we're getting even more dense, more volume. So now we're adding another exercise. Now we started at clean, and then in phase 2 went to clean and press. And then in phase 3, growth, we're adding the reverse lunge. So now we're training clean, press, squat, lunge. Higher volume, and now we're getting into lactic acid training. This releases growth hormone, and we know growth hormone and cortisol have an inverse relationship. So when you have higher growth hormone as a result of the style of training that you're following, higher growth hormone releases cortisol levels because they have an inverse relationship with each other. And right, cortisol is a stress hormone, right? We can make it difficult to lose body fat, right? A body under stress does not lose weight, does not lose body fat. So higher GH as a result of lactic acid training is going to decrease cortisol levels. It's going to help you sleep better. It's going to make it harder to store body fat, which is why Ryan just kept dropping body fat, even though he was eating more. And so the training is high volume, lactic acid based training, but to support the performance, higher calories, higher carbs, higher protein. And then the last phase, this is the step 7 of the roadmap. The last phase is synergy. Synergy ties everything together. So weeks 13 through 16 ties everything together. It solidifies phase 1, which is ignite, right? Strength focused training. So it solidifies phases 1, 2, and 3 by bolting all the skills together. So now they're going to be integrating all the things that they trained over phases 1 through 3. Okay. So they're going to be getting in strength focused training. They're going to be getting in density training, and they're going to be getting in lactic acid training. So the training itself, the volume is lower. So by the time they get here, they've gone through pretty much 3 straight weeks of deconstructing the body, really high volume. Volume starts out moderate in phase 1, increases in phase 2, and it peaks at phase 3. And then from there, we just completely drop off. Okay, so we really drop the volume there. Why would we want to do that? To leverage the super compensation effect. So the super compensation effect is this. Let's say this is like your energy. Okay, so when you train hard, high volume, right, and you start breaking things down, your fatigue, you drop. All right, with enough rest, here was your baseline. Okay, with enough rest, as you drop, when you come up, you're going to go above the baseline. So this little gap here those are your gains. Those are your results. So you can't just keep, training hard. Like you're just going to keep getting worse. But you can maintain like a decrease in fatigue for a little while. But then with enough rest and recovery, you actually come up and above your baseline and set a new baseline. Okay. And those are your results. And it's just like this little step, like little wave step cycle over time. So when we get to phase 4, we lower the volume to leverage the super compensation effect. And we continue to, if needed, increase calories. So just by virtue of decreasing the volume and even potentially increasing calories again, based on if they got leaner, they will continue to see more fat loss. So they get 1 day of strength focused training, they get 1 day of density training, and then 1 day of muscle building, hybrids. Hybrids are chains and complexes put together. So Synergy is designed to maintain the strength that they built in phase 1. It's designed to trim any excess body fat left over from phase 2, which was transform, and then to maintain the muscle that they built in phase 3 with maximal strength, right? Even though they may still be in a caloric deficit, but usually by now you're eating in a surplus, usually by now, without gaining body fat. So by the end of phase 4, insulin sensitivity should be like as high as it was in Ignite. They should be lean or even leaner than they were in Transform, and their body is as strong and as resilient as it was in Growth. But the key here is training one discipline, one skill at a time. So if you want to lift and eat and stay lean, as Sayek's question is, if you want to do that, these are the 7 steps. These are the exact 7 steps. Like I literally just explained to you the initial coaching program that we take people through, the initial 16 weeks of the program. So if you want to lift, eat, and stay lean, these are the 7 steps that we take our students through. This is what we have observed to have the biggest impact on their training, to where they're not restricted in, with what foods that they can eat. They can eat foods that they enjoy as long as they stay within the framework, within the guidelines that we've built for them. And ultimately, this is repeatable. Why is it repeatable? Because they're truly not restricting anything. The moment you have restriction enter into the plan, just people won't comply. But they're able to eat pasta, burgers. They've got a cheat day once they get to phase 2. Like they're able to still enjoy their life and still get lean in the process. So really, it's repeatable. And that's what we need ultimately if we want long-term progress, long-term success, is we need repeatability. So within our coaching, we give our students 2 options. Option 1 is what we call hardstyle, and option 2 is what we call minimalist. So the hardstyle version is complete customization. They have complete autonomy to customize everything based on their lifestyle so they can run it at their pace. And then we give the option 2 is minimalist. Like, I don't want to think, Hector. I don't want to think. Just give me the exact plans. Tell me what to do. And then they train, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they follow the system, and then they get the results on the other end. So if you need help putting all this together, if you need help putting together definite plans based on this roadmap, well, this is exactly what we do with our students. In 16 weeks, we help men 40 plus build stronger, leaner, more capable bodies in less time so they can do more things that they enjoy doing. So if you want to lift, eat, and stay lean with kettlebells, I'm going to drop our calendar link in the description. If you want help putting this together in a repeatable system for you, this is exactly what we do. Set up a time to chat with us. We'll set up a quick 20, 30-minute call. The whole goal on that call is to really just dive into your goals, see what's working, see what's not working, and really establish if it would make sense for us to work together. Okay. And if it is, we'll dive into the enrollment process and we'll lay it all out of how it all works, and then get you started towards your goal. So that's all I got for you today. I appreciate you watching. Sayek, I appreciate the question, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.